question will be very easy. Where are we now? Where are you now, and what are you going to do?
We're at the Moscow International Airport. We're about to board a flight back to Australia. A long 30-hour flight. It's very tough to fly so far, especially when you've got to have your body in top shape to compete. The long flight really takes it out of you.
Why did you decide to come to Russia? Because it is pretty tough to get here, to get in Russia, and I think you had to have really strong motivation to be here.
Well, I'm just so passionate about powerlifting. It's nothing would have stopped me from coming over here. As soon as I knew the competition was on, and that Kirill was the president of this new federation, and I just knew it would be an outstanding event and with all the greatest lifters. So I couldn't turn an opportunity down like that.
Where did you find out? Where did you know about this competition, and how many time did you have to prepare?
I heard about the competition maybe 3 or 4 months ago. At that point, I wasn't in a financial position to be able to travel to Russia. I was very interested in the competition, of course, but finances weren't going to allow me to come. I was given the opportunity by a new sponsor 4 weeks before the competition. So I had 4 or 5 weeks preparation, and it was the shortest preparation I've ever had for a powerlifting competition.
In order to have you here, I think Kirill Sarychev had to attract you with some interesting things. Maybe he told you there will be many famous lifters. Maybe you knew that there will be Gaglayev, there will be some strong athletes, maybe, and you wanted to compete in a strong family.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I became very close to Milanichev since 2011 when he first visited Australia. He's became like family to me now, and Misha. Razakov, who comes to Australia every time with Andre, we've become so very close. Every time I've been to Moscow, I've formed so many friendships with so many different people, and I have great relationships with all the elite lifters in Russia, and it's like one big family reunion all around the world, all world championships, and now in Russia, and as so many people respect Kirill Sarychev. All the lifters respect him so much. So he will attract the best lifters every time. And I knew I didn't have the full list of competitors, but I knew that they all respected him and they all would be there. So I wanted to be a part of it. And I think it will only get bigger and better because Kirill is the boss.
This question is very interesting, not only for me, but for many people who know who you are, but not detailed, in big detail. So, can you tell how did you come to powerlifting? Because I know it is very deep and interesting story.
In my teenage years, I found myself in a lot of trouble with police, with crime. I was a drug user as a teenager. Very bad lifestyle. I was involved with lots of the wrong people at a young age, and unfortunately found myself doing long time in prison. I initially went to prison at 16 years old and did a few months. There was a gym there. Started to lift some weights in there. I didn't really know what I was doing. but I love the feel of it. I love the pump. I was very ripped. It was like had very good genetics. And then I promised myself that when I get out of jail, I'll do no more bad things and I'll just become a weightlifter. But I got back out and fell prey to drugs again and crime. I found myself in jail again the following year at 17 for a few months. Started to train in the gym and thought, yep, this is it. My life's going to change now. I'll get out, I'll train and become a powerlifter. But again, it was just, life was so hard for me. Just made so many wrong choices and became on the wrong side of the law again. Back in prison at 18 years old for another few months, same story again. I'll get out, and then at 19, I was on the outside, and again living that bad lifestyle again, fell prey to illicit drugs. I couldn't function without drugs. It was just terrible time. My family, I felt like it was my family, it was the last chance I had to prove to them that I could get better. And I received a very long sentence when I was 19. I was given 10 years in prison. And I remember before I went to prison, I was running away from the police all the time. And but I knew in my heart that something was different. I knew that when I did go back to prison this time, that I would never ever go back. I just knew in my heart that something was different. And so I'd done my time. I think I spent 5.5 years in prison and then was given parole. And from the moment I walked out, my life completely changed. I have not looked back once. I dedicated myself to powerlifting, and I'm just have an obsession with powerlifting now. And so many young people follow me in Australia, and I help so many guys that get released from prison, or so many guys that are they're at risk to fall into the same path that I did when I was younger. And I'll help them in the gym and give them somewhere to train and give a lot of them a purpose in life, and that's to compete in powerlifting. But now I have 2 beautiful young boys, a wife, my whole entire family just respect and love me so much now. And it was, I think I just know how bad the bad times were. So and that's why I just am so grateful and so thankful for the friendships and the respect that I now have from people in our industry, in the powerlifting world.
Do you remember the level of powerlifting in Australia when you started training outside of prison? I mean IPF, Alternative Federation, and just overall level in Australia.
When I was released from prison, there was no raw powerlifting in Australia. There was in the state that I live in, Tasmania, there was only one powerlifting federation. It was the IPF.
When was it?
That was in 2005. There was only one powerlifting federation, IPF. That was in Tasmania. I remember when I was in prison, each year we'd have a powerlifting competition inside the prison, and there was a prison officer, a prison guard, who just happened to be a high up official with the IPF. So he would tell me all the records, the IPF records in Australia, and I think at the time I was in the under 100 kilo division, and I was always ahead of the national champions each year. So I was just so excited to get out of prison and be able to compete, because I knew that I was very competitive. And I think, when I got out in 2005, I think the Australian record in the squat in the under 100 kilo division was 320 kilos equipped. It's come a long way since then. So
when did you find out about level competition outside of Australia? Maybe you read some newspapers, magazines, maybe you saw it, or you saw it on the internet. Maybe then you realized that powerlifting is very popular outside of Australia, and it is very developed.
Yeah. Well, in 2005, because I wanted to travel overseas. I knew there was more out there. I knew there was I knew powerlifting was bigger in Europe, and my goal was to compete at a world championships, because I remember seeing Milanichev's name a long time ago, and it was over 1,000 kilo total in the IPF, and I just could not believe that there was a human being that could actually lift that much. And I was squatting 300 kilos at the time, and these guys were squatting 400 plus. It was just superhuman to me. And unfortunately, in 2005, I qualified for the IPF World Championships in Norway, I think. Unfortunately, the parole board wouldn't allow me to travel overseas, so that was a really big letdown for me. The following year, the parole board wouldn't allow me to travel again, so I formed a relationship with another federation in Australia, CAPO. So at that point, I realised that whilst I was on parole, I would never get out of the country to compete internationally. So it took me a few more years to finally finish my parole. And the very first year that I did finish parole, which was in 2011, I was with the Federation CAPO, and I qualified for the World Championships in Latvia. And that one international trip to Latvia changed my whole entire life. I remember it was my first time ever out of the country, out of Australia. KK was on the roster in my weight division in the powerlifting. Laszlo from Hungary was in my weight division in the bench press only. So it was the very first time I'd ever seen these larger than life characters in powerlifting in person. So it was just amazing, and it was just so amazing to see these lifters in person and to be warming up with them in the warm-up area. And it just gave me so much motivation and so much passion for the sport. I came back to Australia a totally different person, and I knew then that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And slowly but surely I started to build relationships with some of the great lifters around the world on the internet. So Latvia was where it started for me.
Can you say some phrases, your ideas about IPF federations in Australia, because I know your relations are not very well. Please say what you think is okay for interview.
So we all know how strict the IPF is with their drug testing procedures and so forth. The president of the IPF in Australia is Robert Wilkes, who's very famous in Australia. Some of the rules are just crazy. Some of the lifters can't even be a spectator at another federation's competition. There's been situations where spectators in the audience have been asked to take GPC or CAPO t-shirts off while they're watching an IPF competition. It's just ridiculous. And
it is also not allowed to be in a warm-up room.
It's just madness. And but slowly but surely, some of the greatest IPF lifters in Australia are leaving. They can't put up with it anymore. I won't say any names, but there's one guy in particular that I know who has been very loyal to the IPF for many years in Australia, a very respected lifter. and some of the stories about but the terrible things that he's had to put up with that federation. I think if the IPF in Australia was run by a very good man, like a very well-respected man, I think powerlifting in Australia would be very different. You hardly hear a good thing about the management of the IPF in Australia, and it's just so unattractive to new lifters, and that's all I can put it down to, really. I believe if there was a good leader in Australia for the IPF, someone the lifters looked up to, someone that was very well respected, I think the IPF would be bigger, and would possibly produce stronger lifters. And
can you mention the most strongest Australian lifters? Three people, regardless of duration.
Yeah.
When Howlett?
Nah, look, there's so many. The depth of Australian powerlifting is just crazy at the moment. There's a couple of lighter lifters, young Christos from Adelaide. He's now an all-time record holder, all-time, in the 60 kilo division, something like that, 67. We have another all-time record holder. Is it Critter? What weight class is he? These guys are totaling 10 times body weight raw. They're phenomenal. So, Christos, Critter. There's Odell Manuel, of course, who's famous. Those three guys are the ones that first come to mind. But you have Alex Lowe as well, who's a great lifter. Ange Gallardi is one of the world famous bench pressers. Also, he's totaled 10 times body weight before in the equipped division. The list goes on. We have a very big bench presser down there, Jason Semler, at the moment. He's in the 125 division and benches 280. So that's huge for Australia. We very soon will have our first 300 kilo raw bench presser.
Just now you made a good promotion for these people.
Yeah.
You mentioned them.
Yeah. Well, we've literally have the two of the strongest lightweight guys in the world raw in Australia, and I don't think there's enough spoken about those guys. And they're really good guys too. They're really good men.
And level is getting higher and higher every year.
It is absolutely. Now the GPC has become so huge in Australia. They've just done an amazing job with that federation. CAPO, I think, has somewhat put powerlifting, Australian powerlifting, on the international map with the work that we've done in recent years. And I think each federation has kept each other on their toes. Like GPC does so well, so it makes CAPO want to or have to do better, vice versa. So one raises the bar higher, the next one will raise it a bit higher. It's amazing. And
let's remember 2011 year, November.
Yep.
So it was Andrei Malanchev tour in Australia. How can you describe this event in Australia, and were consequences of this tour was large, big?
Very big. 2011, I think, is the most significant year in powerlifting for Australia, in terms of where we are now. Well, I believe Australia is at a point now in powerlifting because of the year of 2011. 2011, George Okunov, yeah. George, obviously, is from Russia but lives in Australia, in Western Australia, and he's been on the powerlifting scene in Australia for many years. And he's had obviously speaks Russian, and he's had a great relationship with lots of Russians via the internet. And I remember George approached me at a local competition and said to me, hey, what would you think about Andrei Milanichev coming out to Australia later in the year? And I said, absolutely, lock it in. He also spoke to some other, Henry Day in Western Australia, who accepted. Sydney, Jocelyn up in New South Wales, and that was the start of it. And then Andre, I think he totaled over 1,000 kilos in Western Australia. Flew to Hobart, totaled even more, 1,070 kilos in Hobart. Both times squatting over 400, deadlifting 400 in Hobart. A week later, he goes to Sydney, squats 400 in training and deadlifts 400, I think.
Was it important to see such a huge weight in person, so in distance, 1 meter?
Yeah.
Why? It is psychologically?
Yes. It had never been done in Australia. It had never been seen in Australia. The biggest, at that point in time, the biggest equipped total in Australia was 960 kilos, held by one of our greatest lifters, Adam Coe. So we'd actually never seen a 400 kilo raw squat in person, let alone 1,000 kilo total and raw as well. So it brought powerlifting and superhuman strength to reality in Australia in 2011.
What can you say about Eric Lillibridge? I see he's getting stronger and stronger every month. Is it correct when I say that Andrei Milanichev was his motivation and he's going to beat him?
Yeah, well, look, I know Eric has so much respect for Andre, and I mean, I've spoke to Eric. I've been with Eric on a few occasions, and we've both spoke about Andre, and we've just shook our heads at how amazing he is. So, but yeah, I've said from the very beginning that Eric Lillibridge will end up. I believe he will end up the greatest. He's got so many years ahead of him. He's just phenomenal. But yeah, obviously, all these guys a couple of years ago were only squatting 400 kilos. I remember a couple of years ago I was squatting around the same as what Eric was. I actually thought that I was going to get the all-time record before Eric. I was going to break Eric's all-time world record. I was doing it in training, but within 3 months of me injuring my legs, it went from 400 to 440, something like that. So, but yeah, Andre has played a major role. I mean, in everybody that has progressed internationally. There's Derek Kendall, who's squatting around the same weight. Eric. I mean, I don't know Derek personally, but I'm sure that Andre has been a motivating factor in his training.
And so, who is the best squatter in the world right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's two different things. Who's the best squatter or who has the biggest squat? I think, no doubt, Eric Lillibridge has the biggest squat of all time. And I think he'll keep going, and eventually he will be the greatest ever. I still think Andre is the strongest squatter, Andrei Milanichev. Yeah, I mean, in saying that, Eric has the biggest squat, so he's the best at the moment. But yeah, I think Andre can squat 480.
Who is the best bench presser in the world?
Yeah, well, no doubt for me at all, it's Kirill Sarychev. I know Spotto is incredible as well, and obviously Scott Mendelson, who I respect all of those guys so much. I just think the conditions Kirill has done his massive bench presses in, it just tips him over the line a little bit, just to beat Eric, just by a fraction. But who knows where it's going to go. I know Eric has come back from an injury recently, and I know he'll have his eyes set on something massive very soon. But I also know Kirill plans to do something very big at the end of the year. I believe Kirill would have done the all-time record in Australia, but unfortunately the wrong bar was out on the platform. It was a very weak bar. The proper bar was in the warm-up area. And I remember Kirill said to me after his second or third attempt, he said, "Wayne, I can do more, but the bar, I don't think it's safe. The bar is just shaking too much." Everybody could see Kirill had another 10, 15 kilos easily.
It was a pity.
Yes, it was. And I'm very angry about that bar, the wrong bar being on the platform. I can't believe it. It was a very cheap bar that was meant to be in the warm-up area. And somehow it ended up on the bench with Kirill with 320 kilos loaded on it. Yeah.
How come you started cooperation with Anton Soldov, and how was it, or how is it?
Yeah. Okay. During the time that George Ukhanov introduced Andrei Milanichev to the Australian people, the bridge of communication with most people was Dmitry. It was you, yeah. So, and you have played a major role in bridging that gap from Australia, Russia, and so you obviously not only was you responsible for Andre and the Australian tour, all the amazing videos that were on the internet, but you also introduced me personally to Anton Soldov, who's just been an incredible support to me, and he's coached me the last few years. Unfortunately, I've had quite a few injuries, but he has also coached me to the biggest equipped total in Australian history. In 1 year, I had the biggest total without wraps, the biggest total with knee wraps, the biggest total equipped, and that was all under the guidance of Anton Soldov. So his system works. There's my brother also works under Anton, and a couple other guys at my gym, and we have a 100% success rate with Anton. If we haven't had an illness or injury, his training has led us to a personal best total every time.
The first month training with Anton tough, difficult to get used to.
Yeah.
And, what do you remember about this month?
Yeah.
Training with Anton.
Yeah. Well, at the very start, I found it was too light. I didn't feel like I was lifting enough weight, and I was just so used to coming into the gym and just trying to max out all the time and lift too heavy. And I thought I knew what volume was, but I didn't really know what volume was until I met Anton. It's structured so perfectly that you need those light weeks. So many reps, 10 reps, 8 reps, all that sort of stuff. So it was tough to begin with, but now I couldn't imagine training any other way.
This is volume training.
It will compare to what I used to do, yeah.